A millionaire marries a rebellious girl on a dare, but her innocence changes everything. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain fell hard against the glass walls of the Skyline Hotel, streaking silver lines across the city lights. The penthouse suite was dim, filled with the low hum of jazz and the quiet burn of whiskey in crystal glasses. Cole Harrington, 32, sat at the edge of the marble counter, his black suit jacket unbuttoned, his tie loose, his eyes distant. He was a man who had everything: wealth, reputation, power, yet he looked like someone who had just lost the last thing that ever mattered. A crumpled napkin lay beside him, its ink smudged by a few drops of whiskey. Across it were scrawled the words, "Bet you would not marry her." Cole picked it up, studied the handwriting, and let out a bitter laugh. His friends had thrown the dare at him an hour ago in that same hotel bar, laughing about his breakup with the glamorous socialite who had left him for a rival investor. "You are all talk, Cole," they had said. "You would never marry someone real, someone from outside your world." Now the napkin lay like a contract of pride, and pride had always been his weakness. The elevator chimed. He did not look up until the glass doors slid open, and the girl stepped in from the rain. Maya Cruz, 24, denim jacket soaked, dark hair clinging to her cheekbones, eyes sharp and tired from too many night shifts. She worked downstairs as a part-time bartender. Earlier that night, she had thrown a tray of champagne at a drunk customer who had tried to grab her wrist. Cole had seen it happen, quietly admiring her defiance. Now, she stood dripping on the penthouse floor, holding her cracked phone and a folded check he had sent down through security. "You called for me?" she asked, her tone guarded. Cole rose slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow over the room. "Yes," he said, voice steady but unreadable. "Sit down." Maya hesitated. "If this is about what happened at the bar, I am not sorry. That man deserved it." A faint smile tugged at Cole's lips. "That is not why you are here." He slid a white folder across the counter. Inside was a marriage contract, typed, notarized, absurd. "I need a wife," he said, "for 6 months. It is business. Nothing personal." Maya blinked, her soaked eyelashes trembling. "This is a joke, right?" "Completely serious," he said. "You will be compensated. Your debts, your mother's medical bills, everything. You just have to marry me publicly, legally, and quietly. It will last only until the board meeting in December." Her jaw tightened. "So this is some kind of corporate arrangement? Why me?" He leaned closer, his tone low. "Because you are not afraid to talk back, because you do not care who I am, and because I do not have time to fake love with someone who wants my money. It is not every mending you man tells all, and in manable daughters." For a moment, the room was silent except for the sound of the rain and her quickening breath. Maya glanced at the papers, then at the man before her, handsome, hollow, and somehow sincere in his madness. She shook her head. "You really think you can buy your way out of loneliness, Mr. Harrington?" Cole met her gaze. "No," he said quietly. "I am just testing if there is anyone left who would still say no to me." She picked up the folder, scanned the final page, and froze when she saw the clause. No intimacy, no personal interference, mutual respect. It was cold, precise, but strangely human. Her voice softened. "You wrote this?" "Yes. And if I say yes, it is one of a long grapher." "Then we sign tomorrow morning," he said, "and both our lives change forever." Lightning flashed across the skyline, painting their faces in silver and shadow. Maya looked at the contract again, her reflection trembling on the wet glass behind him. Somewhere deep inside, something whispered that this man, this arrogant, broken millionaire, might be more trapped than he looked. She exhaled slowly. "Fine. I will think about it." Cole nodded once, then turned away as the thunder rolled over Manhattan. On the counter, the napkin still lay between the whiskey stains, silent proof that a reckless dare had just become the beginning of a dangerous, life-changing marriage. By the next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving the city washed in pale light. Maya barely slept. She had replayed his words all night. You just have to marry me. It sounded insane, but so did her life lately. Her phone buzzed with another message from the hospital. The payment for her mother's treatment was overdue again. Her brother texted from their small apartment in Queens, saying the landlord was threatening eviction. Maya's fingers trembled as she typed back, I am handling it. But she was not sure she could. Downstairs, she poured coffee at the hotel bar where she worked, her uniform still damp from the night before. Every sound, the clink of ice, the chatter of guests seemed distant. Then she felt it, the hush that came when someone powerful walked in. Cole Harrington stepped through the lobby, composed, dark suit pressed, eyes unreadable. He did not belong to this world of everyday struggle. He was from somewhere colder, higher, where decisions were made with a signature, and yet when his gaze met hers, there was no arrogance, only quiet certainty. He placed a folder on the counter again. You said you would think about it. Maya poured a cup of coffee and pushed it toward him. Still thinking, she said flatly. People do not just wake up and marry millionaires for rent money, in Revertember. Then think of it as saving your family, Cole replied. Your mother's bills, your brother's tuition, your own future. I am offering security, not romance. Maya let out a humorless laugh. You are incredible. You think you can fix people by signing checks. Cole studied her, his tone softer now. I cannot fix anyone. I just need someone who will stand beside me without pretending. Her anger faltered. He sounded tired. There was something behind that polished exterior, something he would never admit. She looked down at the contract again. The first page listed her name, her address, the exact amount of compensation, more money than she had ever seen. Then came the terms. 1. The marriage would last 6 months. 2. No intimacy, no interference in each other's personal lives. 3. Appear together at 5 corporate or social events. 4. Mutual respect at all times. 5. Either party could terminate with written consent. At the bottom, a signature line waited his already there, bold and blue. Maya's voice dropped. What happens when 6 months are over? You walk away with a new start, Cole said. No strings attached. Her mind swirled. Every instinct screamed to run, but every memory of her mother coughing in that sterile hospital room told her she could not. She took a slow breath. If I do this, we do it my way. I keep my job. I keep my freedom. And you never try to own me. For the first time, he smiled, not the smug grin of a man who won, but something real, small, almost grateful. Deal, he said. Maya reached for the pen. The air between them felt heavier than the contract itself. As she signed her name, the sound of the pen scratching across paper echoed through the quiet lobby. Cole extended his hand. She hesitated, then shook it. His grip was firm, steady, but his eyes softened when he said, Welcome to the most inconvenient deal of our lives. She gave a faint smirk. You have no idea what you are signing up for, Mr. Harrington. He looked at her, half amused, half wary. Neither do you, Mrs. Harrington. The sapped out. Outside, the city roared back to life. Inside, 2 strangers had just agreed to live a lie so convincing that neither of them knew how real it might become. The ink on the contract was barely dry when Maya realized what she had done. That afternoon, Cole's driver arrived at her apartment with a black envelope and a simple message. Move in by tonight. Her brother stared at her from the doorway, eyes wide. You are getting married? To him? The hotel guy? It is complicated, she muttered, shoving her clothes into an old duffel bag. Just tell Mom she can rest easy now. The bills are paid. Her mother, frail but alert, smiled weakly from the bed. Maya, sweetheart, make sure this man deserves you. The words followed her all the way to the penthouse. By sunset, she stood again in front of the glass elevator, this time carrying her life in one bag. Cole was waiting in the main hall, wearing a navy suit and a watch that probably cost more than her apartment. The room smelled faintly of cedar and expensive coffee. You are late, he said. You are lucky I came at all, she replied, lifting her chin. He gestured toward the living room, where a sleek folder sat on the marble table. House rules, he said. We should go over them before you unpack. Maya rolled her eyes but sat anyway. He opened the folder, reading as if it were another board meeting. Rule 1, he began. Separate rooms. Yours is on the east side of the suite. Perfect, she interrupted. I snore. He ignored her. Rule 2. We appear together at 5 events: the Harrington Foundation Gala, the corporate dinner in Boston, 2 charity luncheons, and the shareholders' reception in December. Sounds thrilling, she said dryly. Rule 3, he continued. No public arguments, no scandal, and no discussing our arrangement with anyone. Not even my family? He paused. You can tell them what you need to, but no one else. Rule 4, she said, reading over his shoulder. Mutual respect. Does that mean you have to say, please? He glanced at her, a flicker of amusement breaking through his stoic expression. Only if you earn it. They sat in silence for a moment, the city glowing behind them. Then she reached for the final page and found a handwritten note at the bottom. It was in his sharp blue ink. Rule 5. Try not to hate me. Maya looked up, startled. You wrote this? Cole shrugged. Every contract needs a risk clause. She folded the page carefully, her voice quieter now. You are not as cold as you pretend, are you? His jaw tightened. Do not make assumptions. She stood, slinging the duffel bag over her shoulder. Too late. I already did when I signed this. It's ready, fling. Cole followed her to the hallway. Your room is the last one on the left. Dinner is at 7. I will have my assistant deliver your schedule. Got it, boss, she said, pushing open the door. Maya, he said before she disappeared inside. You do not work for me. She turned, eyes steady. No, Cole, you work for your pride. I am just collateral. The door clicked shut. Cole exhaled slowly, staring at the empty hallway. He should have felt relief, everything was under control, but instead, a strange unease crept in. In her room, Maya unpacked her few belongings and placed a single photo of her mother and brother on the nightstand. The penthouse was beautiful, silent, and cold. She glanced at the view, thousands of glittering lights stretching across Manhattan, and whispered, 6 months. In another room, Cole poured himself a glass of whiskey and read the final line of the contract again. Try not to hate me. He wondered who would break that rule first. 2 weeks passed, and Maya Cruz's life became an unpredictable routine of etiquette lessons, wardrobe fittings, and endless instructions from Cole Harrington's assistant. Every morning at 7, she was expected to attend a media poise session, followed by brunch meetings where strangers smiled too wide and whispered too much. Cole treated it like a business project. He scheduled everything, from how long she should hold a handshake to which designer dress she should wear to match his suit. Yet behind every polished command, there was a strange quietness in his tone, like a man following a script he no longer believed in. One afternoon, as Maya stood in front of a mirror while the stylist pinned the hem of her new gown, she caught Cole watching from the doorway. His expression was unreadable. Do you always stare at people like they are quarterly reports? She said, meeting his reflection. His lips curved slightly. Only the ones who exceed expectations. She rolled her eyes, though her pulse quickened. Do not get poetic, Mr. Harrington. You might ruin your reputation. That night, they attended their first public event together, a charity dinner hosted by one of Cole's partners. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and champagne, every guest wrapped in luxury and gossip. As they entered, cameras flashed, and Maya instinctively tensed. Cole leaned closer, whispering, Relax. You belong here as much as they do. I doubt that, she muttered, forcing a smile as a reporter aimed a microphone at her. Miss Cruz, how does it feel to marry one of New York's most eligible bachelors? Maya kept her tone even. Unexpected, she said. But I am learning that life's strangest turns can also be its best lessons. See applications on a salon in the consulate was tense as reading. The crowd chuckled politely. Cole looked at her, impressed. For the first time, it felt like they were on the same team. Later that evening, during a short break from the spotlight, Maya found herself alone on the terrace overlooking the Hudson River. She breathed deeply, savoring the quiet. Then she heard footsteps behind her. You handled that perfectly, Cole said, handing her a glass of sparkling water. Most people would have frozen. Maybe I just do not care what they think, she replied. I have faced worse than fancy people with questions. He studied her for a moment. You really are not afraid of me, are you? Maya turned to face him. Should I be? No, he said softly. That is the problem. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights flickered on the surface of the river, painting silver trails across her face. Then Cole cleared his throat and straightened his tie. Our next event is in Boston next week. Pack light. I will send the itinerary. Always the CEO, she teased, sipping her drink. Always the rebel, he replied before heading back inside. That night, as the car drove them home through quiet streets, Maya leaned her head against the window and caught his reflection in the glass, focused, unreadable, but not quite cold anymore. At the penthouse, Cole poured his nightly glass of whiskey while Maya made her usual cup of warm milk with cinnamon. When she placed the mug on the counter near him, he looked up in surprise. "What is this?" he asked. "A peace offering," she said. "You look like a man who has forgotten how to sleep." He hesitated, then took a sip. "That is surprisingly good. It is not about taste," she said with a faint smile. "It is about slowing down long enough to feel something." Cole said nothing. But that night, for the first time in years, he fell asleep without finishing his drink. The following weekend, the private jet touched down in Boston under a gray sky. The wind carried the sharp chill of early winter, and Maya shivered as she stepped onto the tarmac. Cole's assistant handed her a long beige coat, but before she could thank him, Cole was already walking toward the waiting car, his phone pressed to his ear. The drive to the Harrington corporate gala was silent. Outside, the city blurred by in streaks of steel and rain. Maya glanced at him once, his jaw tight, his tone clipped as he discussed profit margins and board votes. For a man who had everything, he sounded perpetually at war with the world. The gala was held in a grand hotel ballroom, glowing with gold and glass. Every corner shimmered with people in designer suits, investors shaking hands, and reporters whispering about the mysterious new Mrs. Harrington. The moment they stepped in, all eyes turned to them. Maya forced herself to breathe evenly. Cole placed his hand gently at her back, guiding her through the crowd. "Just smile," he murmured. "You are doing fine." At first, everything went smoothly. They greeted board members, posed for photos, and even shared a quiet laugh when Cole's assistant spilled champagne on an executive's sleeve. But the peace broke when a woman approached from across the room. Vivian Cho, the company's public relations director, and Cole's former fiancé. "Cole," she said sweetly, her diamond earrings catching the light. "And this must be the wife everyone is talking about." Her eyes traveled down Maya's modest gown, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "I heard you were a bartender." "How refreshing." Maya straightened her shoulders. "And I heard you were a publicist," she replied calmly. "You must be great at recycling old stories." A few nearby guests tried to hide their laughter. Vivian's smile stiffened. "I just hope you know what you have gotten yourself into. The Harrington board does not tolerate scandal." "Then they will have to get used to honesty," Maya said, lifting her glass. "Because that is the only thing I bring to a room. Any one of the flyals." The words struck harder than she intended. The crowd went silent. Cole's eyes met hers, something like pride flickering there. He turned to the reporters hovering nearby. "My wife has a point," he said. "Integrity is what this company was built on." Camera flashes erupted. The tension dissolved into applause. Vivian's expression tightened before she gracefully retreated into the crowd. Later that night, as they returned to their table, Maya leaned close and whispered, "I probably ruined your image." Cole smiled slightly. "On the contrary, you just saved it." Dinner passed with quieter conversations, laughter, and the occasional glance between them that lingered longer than it should. When the event finally ended, Cole offered her his arm as they walked out into the cold. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" she asked. "For standing your ground." "Most people try to impress Vivian," Maya smirked. "I am not most people." "I know," he said. They stood there under the portico while rain misted down again. She tightened her coat around her shoulders. "You know, for someone who says this is just business, you looked awfully proud back there." "Maybe I was," he admitted. "Or maybe I am just realizing that this arrangement is going to be harder to fake than I thought." Their eyes met, and for a long, fragile moment, neither looked away. Then a chauffeur cleared his throat behind them. The moment broke. As the car pulled away, Maya stared out at the city lights flickering through the rain. She had survived her first public test. But deep down, something told her that this fake marriage was beginning to feel dangerously real. The flight back to New York was quiet. Cole worked through spreadsheets on his tablet, while Maya stared out the window, watching the clouds roll beneath them like gray waves. Neither spoke much, but something unspoken had shifted between them since the gala. When they reached the penthouse, the city was asleep under a soft drizzle. Cole loosened his tie and set his phone aside, looking strangely human for once. "You handled yourself well," he said. "I owe you dinner." Maya laughed softly. "I am pretty sure that is part of the contract." "I am adding a bonus clause," he replied. "Dinner on the rooftop. No cameras, no assistants, just food." It was the first time she had ever seen him cook. He stood barefoot in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, burning the first batch of pasta but pretending not to care. Maya leaned on the counter, smiling as she stirred the sauce to save it. The air smelled of basil and rain, and for a moment the mansion did not feel so cold. Later they carried their plates to the rooftop terrace. The city lights glimmered below like fallen stars. Cole poured wine, but Maya chose her usual mug of warm milk with cinnamon. She lifted it toward him. "Cheers to surviving rich people parties." He chuckled, clinking his glass against hers. "Cheers to honesty, even when it ruins the press release." A soft wind moved between them. For the first time, Cole looked different, less controlled, more alive. Maya glanced at the skyline. "Do you ever stop pretending, Cole? The perfect image, the hard shell. It must be exhausting." He was silent for a long moment before answering. "Once. I stopped pretending once. It cost me everything." She turned toward him, the question already in her eyes. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Vivian and I were engaged 3 years ago. I trusted her. Then she leaked private company files to the media for profit. I covered it up to protect the shareholders. Since then, I decided emotion and logic should never mix." Maya nodded slowly. "And yet, here you are, married to a stranger who talks too much." "Maybe I needed to remember what real looks like," he said quietly. The words hung in the air, raw and disarming. Maya's heart stuttered. She tried to brush it off with a smile. "Careful, Cole. You are starting to sound like someone with feelings." He looked at her, and for a fleeting moment, the armor cracked completely. "Maybe I am," he whispered. The silence that followed was heavy, filled only by the hum of the city and the soft patter of rain. She could see the loneliness behind his gaze, the same ache she felt whenever she thought of her mother's fading health or her own restless search for belonging. When the wind grew colder, Maya stood to leave. Cole rose too, slipping off his jacket and placing it gently over her shoulders. "You will catch a cold," he said. She froze for a moment, surprised by the warmth in his gesture. "Thank you." Their eyes met again, closer this time, quieter. The air between them felt charged, fragile, and unfamiliar. Cole took a small step back, his voice almost a whisper. "Good night, Maya." She nodded, clutching the jacket around her like a secret. "Good night, Cole." Back inside her room, she hung the jacket over a chair, breathing in the faint scent of cedar and rain. For a long time, she just stood there, realizing that something had changed. For months, she had promised herself this marriage was just business. But as the thunder rolled faintly in the distance, she knew one truth she could no longer ignore. Some contracts were written on paper, and some were already written in the heart. The following morning, the world that had started to feel almost peaceful crashed without warning. Cole woke to the sound of his phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. He answered with a groggy voice, only to hear his assistant stammer, "Sir, the video is everywhere." Cole sat up, his chest tightening. "What video?" "The one from 3 months ago. The bar footage. The bet." Within minutes, he saw it himself. Splashed across every gossip site and finance page was a grainy clip of Cole laughing with his friends, one of them waving a napkin in the air. The words were clear, even through the static. "Bet you would not marry her." Then the clip cut to a recent photo of Maya from the gala, smiling under the headline, "Millionaire marries bartender as a dare." Cole's stomach dropped. Down the hall, Maya's phone was blowing up too. She stepped out of her room, still in her robe, her face pale. "Cole, what is this?" she asked, holding up the screen. "Tell me it is not true." He stood frozen. For the first time, the man who always had an answer said nothing. "Cole," she repeated, her voice shaking. "Tell me it is a lie." He opened his mouth, but the words caught in his throat. "It started as one," he finally said. "But it is not that anymore." Maya's face hardened. "Not that anymore. You married me on a dare. I was angry, reckless. You were cruel," she snapped. "You made me a headline." The silence between them was heavier than any argument. Maya's eyes glistened, but she refused to cry. She straightened her shoulders and said quietly, "You could have told me. I would have walked away with dignity." Cole took a step forward. "Maya, please. Let me fix this." "You cannot fix what was never real," she said, her voice breaking. By noon, the story had reached the company board. Vivian Cho wasted no time turning the chaos to her advantage. She called an emergency meeting, declaring that Cole's reckless behavior endangered the company's image. Cameras followed Maya everywhere. At the grocery store, outside the penthouse. Even her mother's hospital was surrounded by reporters asking, how much did she get paid for the dare? Even Olawai. That evening, Maya packed her things. Cole arrived home to find her standing by the elevator with her duffel bag in hand. "You do not have to go," he said. "Yes, I do," she replied without looking at him. "You might be able to live inside lies, but I cannot." He reached out, but she stepped back. "Maya, I never meant to hurt you. It started wrong, but somewhere along the way, it stopped being a lie for me." She looked up at him, then really looked at him, and for a split second, he saw the woman who had laughed over burnt pasta and warm milk. But the light was gone. "Maybe that is the saddest part," she said softly. "Because I started believing it was real too. Den mas for bros to save, which is gather we two may des." The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. She stepped inside without another word. Cole stood motionless as the doors closed, leaving him staring at his own reflection in the metal. The next morning, headlines screamed, "Fake marriage scandal rocks Harrington Industries." The board called for his resignation. His investors pulled out. Vivian smiled for the cameras, offering to stabilize the company. Cole ignored the reporters and locked himself in his office. On the desk sat the framed napkin, the one that had started it all. He stared at it for a long time, then turned it face down. Somewhere across the city, Maya sat beside her mother's hospital bed, her phone vibrating nonstop. She silenced it, wiped her eyes, and whispered, 6 months were supposed to save us, not destroy us." But in the hollow quiet of that room, she knew that love, real love, had been the only thing in that contract worth keeping. For 3 days, Cole Harrington disappeared from the public eye. The media called him a fraud, the board called him reckless, and Vivian Cho was already preparing to take over the company. But behind the locked doors of his penthouse, Cole sat alone at his desk, surrounded by silence and regret. He had lost Maya, the company's trust, and most of all, the last piece of himself that believed he could still be good. The napkin lay torn in half on the table, whiskey stains spreading across the ink. He picked up his phone again and again, but every time her name flashed on the screen, he froze. What could he possibly say that would make a difference now? On the 4th morning, his assistant arrived with a letter from the corporate legal team. It was a summons to the emergency board hearing. Vivian had filed an official motion to remove him as CEO. The final vote was scheduled for that afternoon. Cole stared at the document, then at the folded piece of paper he had been keeping in his jacket pocket, the marriage contract. For the first time, he read it line by line, stopping at the one sentence written in her handwriting, "Rule 5, try not to hate me." He stood abruptly, grabbed the contract, and walked out. By noon, the boardroom was filled with cameras, shareholders, and reporters. Vivian sat at the head of the table with her polished smile. "Mr. Harrington's behavior has damaged this company's integrity," she said smoothly. "We need stability, not scandal." Cole walked in mid-sentence, calm but determined. Every head turned. He placed a folder on the table. "If we are discussing integrity," he said, "then let us start with the truth." He pressed a button on the remote. The projector flickered to life, displaying a series of internal emails. Vivian's emails showing stock manipulation and false press leaks orchestrated to sink Harrington shares. Gasps rippled through the room. Vivian went pale. "You cannot prove those are real." Cole's voice was steady. "Every message is verified. And I am willing to face my mistakes in public, something you never did." He paused, glancing toward the reporters. "Yes, I married Maya Cruz because of a dare. That part is true. But what no one saw was what came after. She showed me what integrity looks like when everything around you is fake. She is the only person who ever stood beside me for something other than money. Is C. Sems." The room fell silent. Then one of the older board members cleared his throat. "Mr. Harrington, what are you proposing?" Cole looked directly into the cameras. "I resign as CEO, effective immediately. But not out of shame, out of accountability." I built this empire on control, and I lost the one thing that actually mattered because of it. He placed the marriage contract on the table. This, he said, tapping the signature line, was supposed to be business. It became the only thing that taught me how to be human again. Reporters shouted questions as security escorted Vivian out of the room. Cole ignored them all and walked straight to the elevator. For the first time in years, he did not feel trapped by walls or titles. That evening, he arrived at the small community clinic in Queens. Maya was sitting by her mother's bedside, reading aloud softly. When she looked up and saw him, her eyes widened. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly. Cole took a step forward. "I told the truth. To everyone. About the dare, about you, about everything. Why? Because you deserve to be seen for who you are, not what they said you were," he said. "And because I could not live another day hiding behind money while you kept teaching me how to be real." She hesitated, her walls rising again. "You think one confession fixes this?" "No," he said. "But it is a start. I am not here to win you back, Maya. I am here to return what was never mine to keep your dignity." He placed a single key on the bedside table, the penthouse key she had once returned. "It opens more than one door," he said softly, "if you ever want to see the view again." Before she could answer, he turned and left. Maya sat in silence, staring at the key glinting under the hospital light. For the first time, she could not tell if what she felt was anger or forgiveness. But deep down, she knew something had shifted again. The man who had once married her on a dare had finally done something real. 2 months passed. Winter melted into a quiet spring, and the city seemed to breathe again. Maya had gone back to working part-time at a small art cafe in Queens, the same place she had once dreamed of owning with her mother. Life was simple again, honest, predictable, almost peaceful. Yet sometimes, when the wind brushed through the open windows, she would still remember the view from that rooftop and the sound of his voice when he said her name. Cole Harrington had vanished from the tabloids after his resignation. Rumor said he had left New York altogether, but that was not true. He had kept a low profile, volunteering for a local foundation that built housing for single parents. The man who used to command boardrooms now spent his days mixing cement and carrying lumber. It was not a punishment, it was redemption. One late afternoon, as Maya was closing the cafe, a familiar shadow crossed the doorway. She looked up, her breath catching before she could stop herself. Cole stood there, dressed simply in a gray sweater and jeans, holding 2 cups of warm milk with cinnamon. "I heard this is your favorite," he said quietly. Maya stared for a moment, unsure whether to smile or cry. "You remembered." "I never forgot," he replied. "Can I sit?" She nodded. They sat across from each other in the golden light of the setting sun. For a while, neither spoke. Then Maya finally broke the silence. "You look different." "I am different," Cole said. "I sold my shares, started a community fund in your mother's name. It is small, but it helps people who cannot afford medical care." Her eyes widened. "You did that?" He shrugged. "You once told me that love is not about grand gestures, it is about action." "I am just trying to learn." The words hit her harder than she expected. She looked down, tracing the rim of her mug. "You did not have to prove anything to me, Cole." "I was not proving," he said. "I was thanking you. You showed me that honesty is not weakness, it is strength." They sat in silence again, the kind that felt full rather than empty. Outside, the city buzzed softly, but inside, time seemed to stand still. Cole finally reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a thin silver frame. Inside it was the napkin, the one that had started everything, pressed flat and clean. Beneath it, written in careful ink, were 5 new words: bet, regret, respect, real love. Maya smiled faintly. "You kept it." "It reminded me how easily pride can ruin something pure," he said. Then he took a slow breath. "I do not expect you to say yes, but I came here to ask anyway. Would you give me another chance? No contracts, no rules, just real." Her heart tightened. She thought of her mother's gentle warning, "Make sure he deserves you." She thought of everything they had survived, everything he had changed. And for the first time, she saw not the millionaire who once played with dares, but the man who had finally learned what commitment meant. She reached across the table, her hand resting lightly over his. "You know," she said softly, "you never owed me an apology. You owed yourself a second chance to be the man you were always supposed to be. Cole looked at her, his eyes filled with something warm and unguarded. Does that mean yes? Maya smiled, the kind of smile that carried both forgiveness and promise. It means let us start from where it should have begun. Truth. Enshu. Weeks later, under a clear spring sky, they stood together on the rooftop where it had all begun. No tuxedos, no crowd, no headlines, just two people holding hands and laughing through tears. She wore her father's old leather jacket. He wore no tie, only the ring she once refused. When they exchanged vows, they did not say for richer or poorer. They said for real. And for the first time, both of them knew they finally meant it.